So Omar is staying on stage now, and we are going from one media leader to another. Jordan, why don't you tell us who's about to come up?
Thank you very much. Omar, have a sip of water. I'll give you 20 seconds, all right? Next up, we'll hear lessons and learnings from another international leader's experience at the helm of a global media organisation. We'll hear her reflections on seismic industry shifts, how client demands are changing, and what agencies of the future need to do to survive, but also thrive. So please welcome President of it's Susan Kingston-Brown.
Hello. Please don't be shy, have some water. We've been having a great time without you just now.
I know, whoever put me after Stephen needs to be shot.
No, he's just your warm-up act.
That is, that's a hard act to follow for sure.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As I said, this is part 2 of our double-header lessons in leadership. You had the media agency CEO, the media owner CEO, and now media agency boss. Welcome. Susan Kingston-Brown is EMEA boss at part of IPG Media Brands. You've only just come into that role, haven't you? But you've been at the company for 6 years. And you may or may not know that she grew up in a convent school.
I did. Yeah, I've been at IPG 6 years, but a different start in Dublin. I grew up in Dublin, and as anyone Irish in the audience is going to recognise this, I went to a convent, so I grew up in quite a restricted Catholic environment, which didn't suit me, but quickly broke the boundaries of that and got away from it, thankfully. But very interesting upbringing, I have to say.
Indeed, and had a father who ran a pharmacy and did whatever he could not to dispense drugs to people if he could help it. So definitely, we'll get into some of what maybe goes against the grain and what I'm picking up from you in our conversation. So explain your role. I mean, the purpose of this interview is to talk about how media agencies evolve, how leadership within media agencies evolve going forward, and it's a period of lots of change. We've just heard from Stephen Meyer and how one media owner has changed its business so much, from doing radio to outdoor to digital audio, exiting different parts of the industry as well. First of all, explain your role. What do you do at and what would you say drives you as a leader when you're managing people?
So my role, I look after across EMEA. So it's the front door is what we call it to clients as well. So we look after client service, client experience and relationships essentially. And then secondly, of course, as a media agency, we look after the sizable responsibility of spending their money wisely, hopefully to grow their companies as well. So the EMEA role is really to work with all of our individual local market CEOs to make sure they've got the best of So from our product, our planning processes, and also how they bring that to bear on our international clients as well. I like to spend as much time as possible with clients because I think the point of change for the media agencies is to understand what clients need, and we have to continually evolve everything that we do around that and not be too inward focused, which I think is important as well. So a lot of my time is spent with clients as well as the teams who service them, just to understand that we are, I suppose, keeping one eye open, what's next, what's around corners, and we're able to make sure clients are getting that from us as well. Yeah, and explain how the EMEA, the pan-national regional role, how does that work in terms of account management? Because do you have to be able to speak 10 languages, and or there must be particular sensitivities between what brands are trying to do in different regional markets. How do you manage that? Well, language skills are terrible unless you want to speak Irish. So I don't think many of the markets speak that as well. I think the biggest thing is, it's different client by client. Some clients are quite centralized, so they make decisions quite centrally, and some are very decentralized, so they have local marketing teams that our teams locally work with them. The most important thing, I think, running international is to have that cultural awareness. People like to work differently. They've got different cultural nuances around feedback, how you instruct them, how you train them, how you work with the cultures in those markets as well. So it's really important to understand that, to make sure our people feel like they've got what they need, but it's not just one size fits all. So I think that's really important, and it's why we have a very local network to service clients, because ultimately people buy products locally as well. So if we don't have people on ground who understand the Spanish consumer versus the German consumer versus French, then we're not going to be able to do a good job for our clients as well.
Does that affect, I was going to ask you the question, what makes great account management in 2024 and beyond? But now I think I want to ask you, what does great account management look like in the UK versus Spain or Israel?
Yeah. I think there's common threads. I think one thing we're obsessed about is we call it client experience. It's just the same word for something else, which is client service. And actually, the reason we rephrased it to client experience is it's understanding the pressures clients are under, and being able to partner with them based on what they face on a day-to-day. And I think a huge amount of what comes from that is you need to have energy, you need to have enthusiasm, curiosity, and really feel like you're able to kind of have interesting conversations to clients and not just responding to briefs, giving them what they're asking for as well. So that's kind of the common thread, and it's the common thread of what we look at when we look at the profiles of who we need at UM. In order to do that, the media agency world is quite resource intensive. It can be that people come into this world to be creative, but they spend a lot of their time on Excel. So we're trying to get rid of those things that restrict people from having time to think and having time to be creative as well. So a big part of what we do is ensure people have brilliant platforms to work with, and the tools and the systems they need so they can spend the time thinking as well. But then in every single local market, they will do business, build relationships differently based on the cultures. So there's massive common threads, and we do a lot of training around that, but then we allow people to have freedom within that to put their own stamp on it and bring their own personality to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into how you see the media agency of the future, how maybe lift the lid on maybe how you want to change things at IPG Media Brands, as well. We just heard from Stephen Myron use some colourful language to describe, if you... if you
I did hear that.
If you're a boring so-and-so, being an accountant, etc. But you've just kind of bumped on that, haven't you, in terms of what you do as a media agency is so more technical than what you would have been doing 10, 20 years ago. So you need to have more quantity people, don't you? And
absolutely.
How creative of a business is this still?
I think it's still hugely creative. I think for a long time, the industry problem was we had the wrong people doing the wrong jobs. So you have...
Why was that?
You have deeply, like a lot of people who are client-facing and client managers have to have a really breadth of technical knowledge to be able to have conversations around, everything from the latest DSPs to, the latest advancements in streaming and how to use data brilliantly. But you don't necessarily have to be the one to do the application of it. And as the capabilities were advancing, agencies often had the same person doing a lot of maybe activation across multiple channels, but it needs quite different skill sets, or the person who's doing the ideas also doing the activation and the media buying in platform. And they're really different skill sets. So I think that the agency of the future will have a really big, detailed, no worries. No worries.
Thank you.
He can hang around me more often. I can get things done. It's fabulous. So the agency of the future, I think, will have deep clarity of understanding the jobs to be done, and then put people in the right roles. Because I do feel there's an over-index sometimes on the extrovert and the kind of energetic, creative person. But actually, so many brilliant ideas will come from the more introverted, boring effers that Stephen referenced, which I think we have to make space for, and we have to make room for, and we have to. Actually, I was in a internal meeting a couple of weeks ago. We had a facilitator, and it was the best tactic I've ever seen used, which was in a group, quite a big group. They said nobody's allowed to speak for the second time until everybody has spoken for the first time. And I thought, wow, it's such a simple thing. And you actually see, and I saw the dynamics of the room completely changing, and some brilliant thinking and brilliant ideas coming from more the introverted people. So I think that's really important, is number one, kind of clarity on exactly what people are doing, the jobs they need to do, and equip them to do it. And then secondly, but just facilitating everyone to have a voice And I think that's where some of the best ideas and new thinking is going to come from.
So that's really interesting on a micro level, but take it to the macro level. Isn't the big challenge you face, IPG media brands, IPG, don't you just seem fungible and the same to these marketers when you pitch for new business, when you try to organically grow your own business? What separates IPG from a WPP, from an Omnicom, Publicis? You're all the same, a lot of marketers might tell you.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I have to say, I don't envy clients who have to go through an evaluation process. A few years ago, it was a couple of pitch meetings, a pricing exercise, and then they were able to make a decision. Nowadays, there's so much that you have to evaluate to really see where the difference is. I think one thing we're really going deep on, and I do think set us apart, is the very cheesy line of people, humans, and the resources we have. But it's not the adage of people by people. It's not.
Yeah, you all have people.
Yes, exactly. Everyone has people. Exactly. I think the difference for us is everything has been built, and we've been in stealth mode for quite some time over the past 12, 18 months, really investing in defining our processes and really investing hugely in our technology that powers the people as well. But it's being able to...
Adjust again for the,
no worries.
for the recording.
Use the word stealth mode and it activated.
I know, yeah, stealth, it's very stealth. So I think the difference of unlocking brilliant minds, like the energy, the enthusiasm and the curiosity, that doesn't just come if you've got 9 hours a day of being plugged into Excel and plugged into more of the day-to-day operational jobs. It's very, very difficult to switch gears as well. So what differentiates us is that we've built a very, very consistent process, a very kind of robust technology and platform that allows people to use it, that then allows, and a process to allow people to work like that, have headspace and build their thinking around it. So when we now talk to our existing clients or when we're pitching, we make that a very, very tangible benefit to them about how we harness our people differently than some of the other groups as well. It's still important to do the operational stuff brilliantly and to make sure there's, it's accurate and all of that kind of fundamentals to have in place as well. But it's more important that our people are thinking kind of one step ahead. And if we don't systemize that, it's freedom within a framework that people have to think and be creative, then I think we're doing our clients a disservice. And I do think it differentiates us from the rest a little bit as well.
Yeah, I have a weekly column for the Media Leader, and I wrote this week about, I was trying to make a really stark comparison between the business that you run, and I mentioned 4 companies who control market share collectively on a global scale versus, in the UK, you look at the supermarkets, for example, 4 companies largely who control market share. They have very kind of small margins. You have big margins. IPG, the biggest among the big 4, 20% plus margins, the whole total business. Obviously very different businesses. But in terms of, you've got that media planning and buying element, but you've also got nowadays products as well, where you have proprietary tools that you're selling. So those are a key differentiator. But do you think that the tendency is you become more of a product selling business as opposed to an agency in the traditional sense where you become less of a consultant, neutral, agnostic advisor to actually selling products to clients?
I think the danger is the pressures of, anyone working in an agency will tell you the pressures of hitting any organization. You have to hit targets, you have to be profitable, to reinvest in the future of the organisation, to invest in new capabilities and technology. So I think that's very important to us, that we have one eye on that as well. I do think it's quite short-sighted to just sell products to clients, and they'll see it and they'll feel it very quickly, and they'll sniff it out. I think what we do try and do is try and solve problems for clients. And, obviously part of our product suite, if there's kind of advanced analytics, if there's other part of our business that can do creative services for them that fit into a suite of things that they should do to grow their business, then that's what they should do. And it goes back to, when we first talked, it goes back to there's an integrity in it as well. We don't want, and it's core to our values at IPG as well, the integrity of doing the right thing for the client. And growing up in a pharmacy where my father's business was to make money from selling medicines, and he would advise everyone and anyone not to ever buy drugs on a daily basis. My business head, even at like 7 years old, was like, "What are you doing? Like, that's like, what we should be doing to grow our business." But it just, the integrity of then, and he had a long-term, loyal customer base for that very reason, is that they knew that they had the trust in what he was saying and what he was recommending. And I do take the same values, and it's why really I was attracted to IPG, because I think that's a big part of our DNA, is to ensure that we have a long-term focus on the clients, and not just to service the clients, but to service our business, because long-term client relationships are much healthier than having to, a constant swirl of pitching and bringing in new business, which is expensive and disruptive.
Yeah, and anyone who works in an agency will tell you, some people love it, but some people don't love it, in terms of that pressure, that inimitable, tension and slog that it is to go through a whole pitch process. Do you think that's something that you would want to change if you could wave a magic wand in the future? Are agencies too focused on pitching, winning new business, as opposed to trying to manage existing clients and grow organically?
I think that the pitches is an inevitable part of our business. I think we're a business where it feels like an extracurricular activity for the teams, where they have to do it over and above their day jobs. It's very difficult, because it's difficult to ensure. It's a huge commitment of time. So I think there's a way to facilitate your business to run pitches well, and in a healthy environment that allows people to enjoy the experience and learn from it as well. I've got quite a strong opinion on kind of prioritizing our existing clients over pitching, because I do think, one, again, like delivering on all the promises we made is very, very important to us. But also then, when you do have the selected pitches that you go for, the evidence that a client will look for through that process is, number one, you deliver on your promises. They'll look for evidence, they'll look for references, and they'll look for the data behind that. And number two, they'll look for evidence of the work that you're doing. So it's only through, doing amazing work with clients and making sure that they're very satisfied with the partnership, that you actually, the byproduct of that is that you grow the business as well. So I think it's a very important relationship to prioritize existing clients first, not only for the integrity, but also for the growth of the business as well. But pitching isn't going to go away. Clients have a very clear duty to make sure such a huge amount of investment is under the rigor and under the evaluation that they're spending it wisely and with the right partner as well.
And whether it's existing clients or new clients that you want to work with, what's changed in the conversation in terms of what marketers tell you they need from a media agency, and how do you see that changing the media agency for the future?
We just did, this year has been very interesting. So we've had a few pitches where I've personally spoken to the CMOs at the start of the process, and they've talked about not wanting to be a cost decision, because they felt like the world has gone very much into a very cost-driven decision making, and it's been at the damage of the relationships that they had and the type of value they get from the partnerships as well. So there's a couple recently where it was very interesting. It was kind of like, wow, I feel like I'm being lobbied to be interested and very motivated to, put our best foot forward on this piece of business. So I think that what their pressure points was, they need a partner who not only is doing the day-to-day brilliantly, but is helping them to look at where progress is going to be achieved across their business. So they want a partner who's motivated and can equip their people to be able to do that as well. So many of the CMOs of our existing clients, they're facing huge pressures of new competitive entrants, soaring prices in the last couple of years, supply chain, and the effect that has on their sales, and then media has to do, marketing has to do a much harder, more expensive job in order to achieve the results they might have the year before, etc. But they're not getting the license from their shareholders to be able to do that as well. So they're really looking for the creativity around that as well. And it goes beyond media. It goes way beyond media. It's understanding, beyond paid media, how we kind of connect the entire marketing ecosystem as well. So I think they're looking for a partner who's going to understand the pressures, help them diagnose it, and help them consult with them in the marketing ecosystem. Like, how are you going to get creative and media to work together? How do you have a really efficient production solution that allows you to create masses of personalised creative without a huge bill at the end of it as well? So I think, and we help clients nowadays. We've got a couple of companies who are owned by private equity. So they want us to help ensure that their board understands the continued investments they need to put behind marketing for the successful growth of the company as well, even if they're not seeing the immediate return.
Yeah, ownership is so important to how you run your business. The previous interview with Stephen Myron talking about the benefits of being a privately owned business. IPG is not, it is a public company, so you have that pressure. Yes. Maybe it comes back to the margin conversation, you have that pressure of delivering consistent profits, shareholder value, everything you do is in the public eye. How do you try and change your media agency business? How do you try and future-proof it without that innovator's dilemma problem where you're trying to upend in some ways what you're currently doing, all the while in the public glare?
Yeah, it's a balance, to be honest. You have to, regardless of private or public, firstly, you have to be able to do both. You have to continue to deliver whilst you're looking at what you need to change within the organisation. I think there is benefits to the transparency that comes with being a publicly owned organisation, and the transparency that goes along with that is that we hold ourselves to quite high standards around transparency in media, around the ways in which we trade the investments for our clients. And I think that creates quite a strong trust within our clients, that because it is public, it's all quite open to them how we do it and what we do. So I think that's important. I think at IPG culturally, Philippe, who's our IPG CEO, he's an incredibly hands-on people person, and he's a very considered listener. So where we, as a media agency, so my boss Eileen, who's the media brand CEO, first female holding group CEO, which is great. She's wonderful, but she has an open door to Philippe's office, and she has done this and gone in and said to him, we are going to work shy of our targets this year because we want to invest in these two areas, which are incredibly important for us for the future. So one this year was investing in our technology. So really elevating the technology platform across the world and connecting it and kind of powering it quite differently. So that's something that we're really proud of that we're bringing to market. And then the second is around other capabilities that we're investing in with new hires and kind of new innovations in certain things. So she has the ability to go to him and say, I've got a long-term plan. I need to invest in that, and we need you to support that with the shareholders. So I think that as long as the dialogue is open, you can balance both.
Yeah. Final question for you about culture. So it may be a bit different for you. You must be on planes all the time, flying around different markets. But for normal people like us in the UK. So in the previous interview, we heard quite a lot about hybrid working and the benefits of working in the office versus not. Lots of people have different views on that. What's IPG Media Brands? What's your policy, and how do you envisage that changing going forward?
So it's different market by market. I think when the general broad policy is 50-50. So, a sense of you should spend a little bit more time in the office than you do at home. I mean, that's a sense of where the litmus test of you're spending the time. I agree with what Stephen said at the end. I heard when he said, you've got a bigger problem if you've got to force people to come. If there's not a reason, if there's not enthusiasm and there's not an energy to spend time together with colleagues, especially the more entry-level roles as well, to learn, to listen, to absorb everything around you. It's so important. And hopefully people get to see the benefits of that as well. I think for international, one thing since the pandemic, just the Teams call environment just creates such, because before that we used to have, it seems like it's like 500 years ago, but it's only like 5 years ago, you used to have the star phones in the middle, and it would be faceless conversations, but now it feels like the connectivity working international has benefited massively, because you have eye contact and you're working together, and it just feels that closer even if you're not physically together. But it is something we strongly encourage. We shy away from mandates. I think we have to look at ourselves as a leadership team if people aren't coming in, and understand why, and look at how we encourage people back in, and make sure we're hiring the right people who want to be learning and spending time with their colleagues around. And again, it goes back to certain roles as well. Certain roles might lend themselves a little bit, or certain days of the week, to being in a more quiet environment, to working on your own, versus when you're in a team environment as well.
Well, you certainly couldn't do events like this working from home, so we're very grateful to all of you coming this morning, and very grateful to Susan Kingston-Brown joining us this morning as well. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for your time.
It's going to be Stephen Woodford next, and I've been on this stage for so long, I don't want to leave now almost, but you have to exit the stage one day, so I'm going to do that now. But thank you so much, and thank you to Susan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Omar.